Have you ever seen a water wheel in action? It's amazing how something as simple as flowing water can generate power. Now, imagine a system that takes this concept to a whole new level, using just a small amount of energy to start a chain reaction that could change the way we think about energy. That's the idea behind the water horse, a theoretical energy system designed to maximize efficiency and minimize waste. It all begins with a tiny spark of energy, just 2.70 joules, about the same amount of energy it takes to lift a small apple 1 meter off the ground. This initial input, while small, is crucial. It acts as the trigger, setting in motion a series of energy conversions and transfers that ultimately result in a much larger energy output. Think of it like flicking a light switch, a small action with a big impact. The beauty of the water horse lies in its ability to harness and amplify this initial energy input. Through a series of clever mechanisms, it aims to squeeze every ounce of potential out of this initial spark, making it a fascinating concept in the world of renewable energy exploration. So how does the water horse transform a tiny amount of energy into something much greater? The answer lies in a multi-stage process designed to convert and amplify energy. The journey begins with the hydraulic pressure conversion unit. This component takes that initial 2.70 joules and uses it to pressurize water. Think of squeezing a water balloon. You're using force to increase pressure. The efficiency of this process is critical, and in a well-designed system, very little energy is lost. Next, the pressurized water flows into the energy storage and spring unit. Here, the energy is temporarily stored as potential energy within a compressed spring. Picture a coiled spring being squeezed tighter. It's storing energy that can be released later. From the spring, the water is transferred to the pressure trapping unit. This clever mechanism prevents the pressure from dissipating, keeping the energy contained within the system. It's like holding your finger over the end of a garden hose. The pressure builds until you release it. Finally, the pressurized water reaches the ram neutralization and weightlifting unit. This is where the magic happens. The trapped pressure is released, pushing a piston upwards. This piston is connected to a weight, and as the piston rises, so does the weight, effectively converting the water pressure into gravitational potential energy. Now here's where things get really interesting. The water horse system doesn't just rely on water pressure alone. It employs a clever trick borrowed from simple machines, the lever. Attached to the weightlifting mechanism is a lever system. Levers allow us to lift heavier objects with less effort by magnifying the force we apply. In the water horse, the weight lifted by the water pressure acts as the input force on one end of the lever. The lever's design ensures that the output force on the other end is significantly greater than the input force. Imagine pushing down on one end of a seesaw. A small effort on your side can send someone much larger flying on the other end. This amplified force is then used to drive a generator, producing a much larger amount of energy than the initial 2.70 joules we started with. The water horse essentially uses water pressure as the initial push to unlock a much larger energy reserve through this lever system. At this point, you might be thinking, wait a minute, are we creating energy out of thin air? The answer, of course, is no. The water horse is not a perpetual motion machine. It can't create energy out of nothing. It simply transforms and amplifies the initial energy input. Once the weight is lifted and the lever has done its job, the system needs to be reset for the next cycle. This is where the concept of a closed-loop system comes in. The lifted weight, now possessing a significant amount of gravitational potential energy, is slowly lowered. As it descends, it drives a mechanism that pumps the water back to the beginning of the cycle, repressurizing it in the hydraulic pressure conversion unit. This reinitialization process essentially recharges the system, preparing it for another round of energy conversion and amplification. It's similar to winding a clock. You're putting energy back into the system to keep it running. So